Welcome to Black Doctors Talk Podcast. I am Dr. Sharon H. Porter, host for this episode and member of the Black Doctorial Network. Today, I am joined by Dr. Francine Adams. She's an adjunct professor, team lead, and subject matter expert at Southern New Hampshire University. Welcome, Dr. Adams. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Porter. I am honored to have this
Abs-
opportunity.
Yes, I can't wait till we dive in. But before we do, can you share just a little more about your background?
I could probably do that all day, but I'm going to make this brief. Looking back on my life as a descendant of slaves, my parents worked hard in the fields in rural Georgia, and then we migrated north to Michigan first, and then to Pennsylvania. So, like many of us folks, as my granny used to say, from the deep South, uh, growing up in the 50s and 60s, I had no vision of success in the future. We landed in Philadelphia just as I was entering kindergarten. By the time I was in third grade, we were transferred to Catholic school where my 7 siblings and I were educated. Uh, this was a bit of a disappointment to me because when I was in public school in the first and second grade, they had promoted me up a grade level. But when I went to Catholic school, I was put back in the grade that coincided with my age.
Interesting. Wow. Now, your life's journey is that of resilience and determination. You earned your first college degree at age 50. Can you share some of those challenges you faced while you were working towards your bachelor's degree in computer science?
Yes, I was no match for the streets in inner city Philadelphia. So in those days, the oldest were often the surrogate parents who were diapering and bottling the younger ones while parents worked. Both my parents worked on the graveyard shift. I was an A student who eventually succumbed to the inner city environment. I became a teen mother in high school. In those days, there was no such thing as Planned Parenthood. I was always a bright student. So uh, by this time, I was ready to graduate from high school, and I had a second child on the way. However, I managed to get down the aisle undercover and march in the graduation with honors. And I earned 3 scholarships to an HBCU, an Ivy League college in Philadelphia, and a local 4-year college. So I chose the Ivy League college and I started attending for 1 year. That was very difficult because I really had no support system and I dropped out. I dropped out of college 4 times. After a marriage and 2 more children and a divorce that lasted about 8 years, after about 8 years, rather, I managed to get all 4 of my children to graduate school uh, in high school while working the graveyard shift myself by this time. I applied 4 times at the community college to earn a degree, but again, I dropped out 4 times. When my youngest child left home, I was lost. All I had done was parenting until a voice inside my head asked me, what are you going to do now, Francine? And I just sat there destitute. I had no one to care for. But suddenly the light came on. And the next day, I enrolled in a prestigious 4-year college at 45 years young, I like to call it. I chose the toughest subject, computer science. I needed to prove to myself that I was capable and I was worthy. So in those days, the classes were face to face, and I had a job now working in the suburbs, 14 miles from home. I would then go to class back in the city, 20 miles from work, then return home, exhausted 3 nights a week. I developed chronic migraine for weeks, and I was not able to work. I was overextending myself. And I had to see a headache specialist who shot Novocaine in my temples so I could go back to work. That was just one of many adventures of getting through college. And at 50, I graduated from LaSalle University with my degree in computer science.
Resilience and determination. I tell you, that's all I hear when I just listen to your life's journey. So thank you for that. Now, you credit your Buddhist practice for learning how to manage your desires and not really succumbing to your emotions. Can you talk a little more about that?
Yes, I'd be glad to. I first stumbled on a book on Eastern thought, which the simplicity impressed me after growing up as a Catholic. It made so much sense in the real world and aligned with nature, with life and science. So I started examining Buddhist sects, and some I looked at did not seem quite like a fit for me. But on my quest, a friend introduced me to uh, the Soka Gakkai, which translates to English as Value Creation Society. And that Buddhist sect fit my aspiration for world peace. I learned to chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. You may have heard this in Tina Turner's movie. I was very similar to her in that movie and not being in control of my life. Uh, all my life, I was controlled by my emotions and insecurities, blaming everyone else for my state of life. I had a victim mentality that consumed me with depression. And if you had a conversation with me, I was always begging for sympathy. So practicing Nichiren Buddhism, uh, doing so for myself and with others in our homes and learning from others' experiences changed my perception. And I started setting goals for the first time in my life. My desires were financial security. I wanted a real house for my children to live in. And I wanted a car parked in front of it and not the high rise that we lived in. Practicing Buddhism enabled me to take these desires and put them in perspective to use as a catalyst to improve my life condition. I began to learn about accountability. Many things contributed to my life condition, and some of those were outside of me, but wherever I went, there I was. And that was what I learned. It was about me and what I would do. I learned to own my destiny rather than run from it, to stop rewriting the victim scene. I could be the writer of the script and on the stage as the lead actor. Then I decided to return to college, this time with goals and a clear vision.
Wow, thank you for that. Now, one of the lessons that you talk about that you've learned throughout your journey is that it's never too late to start again. And I absolutely love that. What advice would you give to the person who is listening or viewing this interview and feels like all is lost? What would you say to them?
First, I would say the beauty of being alive is that all is never lost. I would describe this in simple terms, and I'm going to refer to two of my favorite principles I've used in Buddhism. The first is you can push yourself up from the same ground that you fell down on. When we hit bottom, and I have fallen more than once, we could either lie there and give in, or figuratively speaking, we can place our hands flat on the ground we fell on and push ourselves up until we're standing again. Now, the second is a Buddhist principle in is called Honin Myo, which figuratively means from this moment on. This present moment is the only time we can act. We cannot act in the future. We cannot act in the past. If one feels all is lost, it is only, in my view and from my experience, a perception from existing in some other time than in this moment or the next moment. And those are the times when we can act. We can consciously choose to change our perception with hope, with a vision, and with a goal. It is that flicker that you feel inside your heart when you have a dream. Maybe it's an impossible dream. I encourage others to take their dream and think it, taste it, feel it, touch it, and own it. And that is how you can make it a reality.
Great advice. Great advice. Now, you talk about early on how you really didn't have support, which is why you stopped going to school, but then you saw the need to keep going, and I love that. So, right now, presently, who or what inspires or motivates you to keep going?
I think this is a great question, and that each of us might wish to reflect on periodically. Now, when I finished my doctorate, a colleague, just in passing, congratulated me and said, now it's time for you to establish yourself, to give back to society. That's what you need to do as a doctor. So in my role as adjunct professor and a team lead of adjuncts, I support the daily events, both good and bad, of my students and the professors I support. I also have an S Corp, Fame Futures Millennium, and I have honed individuals who were retiring and helped them who are aspiring to become entrepreneurs, how to set up their business. And that's something that really motivates me. I like to call myself the person who's always giving advice that sometimes people don't want to hear, but that's just my nature. Who motivates me? Individuals returning to college after long lapses. I've joined different groups of aspiring doctorate students who have a lot of questions and uncertainty about their journey. And I like to go in and leave motivating messages and inspiring them not to give up no matter what happens. Also, I am a member of Kappa Delta Pi International Honor Society. Some people may not have heard of it, but I share membership with Albert Einstein and Eleanor Roosevelt. So I'm very proud to be a part of that honor society. I enjoy responding to the posts of aspiring teachers who write on the blogs, write into the blogs, and I enjoy working with others outside of academia in the professional arena on foundation concepts, analyzing frameworks for that will become success factors in the industry, like education, data management, or the digital transformation, and that are useful enough to have global application.
Thank you for that. Now, there were so many things that acted as a barrier for you. I mean, you had death of family members. There was a major automobile accident. You almost lost your home. And so, in the midst of this storm, what would you say helped you the most to get through the storm?
Just to add a little bit more background, I lost my father in my first year. And over the years, I actually had 2 auto accidents. This is all occurring during the course of pursuing my doctorate. I was on crutches for 2 years during the economic downfall when everyone was losing their jobs. So I actually did lose my home. And I had to leave the state and went to rent a room for 3.5 years. And in that final year, and that's where I studied for my doctorate, in that one room. During the final year, my younger sister contracted cancer, and I lost my younger sister like about a few months before graduation. Then I graduated. 4 days after graduation, I was struck in the rear in another car accident. My car was totaled, and I was blamed for the accident, so I had no recovery whatsoever. And I spent another 3 years without a car before I was able to start recovering. It was my Buddhist practice that was my rudder. I was chanting, but it was not chanting alone. But during the process of these experiences, I was gaining a deeper intensity. And that in turn became a deeper appreciation to understand my life experiences, the timing, and that what we endure can be a catalyst for our growth. So many tragic experiences back to back can actually be critical turning points in our life, trying to point us the direction we should be going in. So in Buddhist practice, there is a concept called turning poison into medicine. And that was how I looked at my experiences. How can I turn this into medicine? So the doctorate process, as all of us who've been through it know, is a long journey one experiences in isolation. And even if you have people around you, internally, it's an experience in isolation. And all of these things happened during that time in my life. So I used my Buddhist practice to get me through the storm, and it served me well. I overcame every single obstacle.
Wow. Resilience and determination. That's all I hear and feel about you. Oh my goodness. So you have an IT background and you consider yourself a road warrior. Can you describe this experience? Because as you mentioned, you wanted to go to the hardest major there was to prove a point for yourself. Can you talk about this experience?
Yes. When I first went back to college, college students were getting jobs before they even graduated, making huge amounts of money. That started settled down a bit, but one of the types of uh, roles that were available was a consultant that would travel to different companies and had a specialized set of skills that were in demand. So you would usually travel maybe to a different state, sometimes out of the country, and You would have temporary contracts, usually anywhere from 3 months to a year plus. There were recruiters we call them headhunters, and they would be the ones that would fill the contracts. So if, and sometimes they would ask for a road warrior. That's someone who doesn't mind traveling all over the world almost every day of your work life, or at least a full year. And you may, like I did, come home every weekend. I would work in Boston and I'd return to Miami where I lived every weekend. And in those days, remote work was not as popular as being on site. So being a road warrior, traveling, going different places all the time was exciting for a while. But as you do it longer and longer, one can burn out on the travel. So now that remote work is gained in popularity, and it's likely here to stay, or at least a hybrid of being on site all the time in a different state or a different country, that's probably means that the road warrior concept is diminishing or may disappear altogether.
Wow. Thank you for that. Boston to Miami. That's something. Definitely. So how important is mentoring, and especially in a field such as technology?
Mentoring to me is very, very important because you can have an effect on the lives and moving the careers forward of the proteges that you mentor. I have two favorite proteges that I mentored. One, I actually stumbled upon me. We were on the same social media site. And this was a 20-something young man who lived in Zambia. And he saw that I had an IT background. And he literally asked me, would I be his mentor? And he wanted to learn Microsoft SQL Server. So I had just graduated with my bachelor's, and I embraced the opportunity to connect with him and help him every chance we got. When we did meet, we started realizing it would be a long journey. So I packed up all my college textbooks, and I wasn't making a lot of money at the time, but I scraped up international postage and donated all of my college textbooks to him. He was so sincere, and he studied uh, until using my books, he was able to study on his own and didn't need to keep, uh, having me explain everything. And at the time, Microsoft would let you download the server and get hands-on. Well, he did everything he needed to do. And he became the director of statistics for AIDS in his country. So that was one. And I had a second protege, we're still good friends, who asked me to mentor him to pass a certification exam, which I did, and met with him. And we spent a lot of time online exchanging information, and I was giving him advice. And he successfully passed the certification, and he just was so appreciative. He's in Nigeria, and he was so appreciative. He sent me pictures of the birth of his twins. He sent me pictures of his family, and has kept up with me reporting all of his progress in his country.
Wow, and you almost served as a sponsor in addition to a mentor. That is amazing. Thank you for that. So, what would you like your legacy to be?
My passion, when you say legacy, I think of my children, and I think of my future descendants. So I developed a passion for genealogy and in doing a search for the origins of our family. I I discovered a cousin who was a professor at Howard University. She's an anthropologist and a genealogist, and she helped me trace my genealogy and where she's my second cousin, and we share a former slave who was on a plantation in Georgia, and we went and took a trip together and visited the plantation, and we visited the place where I lived as a child. We went out in a cotton field and we took pictures of ourselves, as if we were picking cotton. And it was so moving. And I have uh, 4 adults and I have 6 grandchildren and a great granddaughter. I want them to be able to learn their lineage and keep it and embrace it and assume the transfer of knowledge of our ancestors to their descendants. So ancestry is a valuable treasure house of knowledge and wisdom. It's a lot of work to learn, but I have chosen to work on a multimedia project in order to enable them to have an artifact that they can transfer to their descendants. And I should add, I also met a cousin that I have in Ghana, and I also met a cousin that I am related to in Guinea, from Guinea, but he lives in Denmark now. So
Wow.
it's been a very moving journey.
Wow. Yeah, I share that passion with you. I love genealogy and just connecting and finding out, family members that I don't know about. So I can definitely relate to that. So thank you for that. What major lesson have you learned in your words as a late bloomer?
Ah, this is one of my favorite definitions of myself. I've learned to appreciate my lifespan and that I was able to uh, remember far back enough when I didn't uh, know how to live. And then I wrote the script that enabled me to be here today. And this is such a joy for me to be a, a, a part of uh, a network of so many valuable professionals. So, had I completed my degree in my late teens and 20s, like it was expected for me to do, I might not have benefited from this wealth of new knowledge and information in the new millennium. Uh, and I can interact with and educate millennials. And that's such a very valuable experience. I would have been um, a dinosaur by this time if I had not been a late bloomer.
Oh, that's actually powerful. Thank you. Wow. So, what skills would you say have helped you achieve your level of success?
That's an easy one. Being insatiable about reading.
Mm,
That's my most valued skill. I don't know what I would do if I could not read.
wow.
At 9 years old, I used to walk to the library every Saturday morning after my chores were done, and I would get there too early every single time. And I would wait outside until the librarian unlocked the door. and she would welcome me. And she was always looking for me on the who goes to the library on Saturday when you've been in school all week.
Wow,
So,
I love it. With that love of reading, that's phenomenal. Thank you. So, Dr. Adams, what are you most proud of?
I am most proud of my young adults' success. Uh, it's not easy for any child who's, you know, I won't say anyone, but for many who've been raised by a single mother. So it's not an easy path, but I'm most proud of my young adult success, particularly because we had many rocky roads and often would not see things eye to eye. I can say the same for my mother and myself, but in truth, I consider my mother the strongest woman that I have ever known. Because I was a single mother, I wanted my children to have the fortitude to take care of themselves without depending on anyone in case something ever happened to me. My dad being strict made me stronger, and my mother moved me to be an achiever. So when I look at my children, I see a lot of things that, in spite of themselves and against all odds, that they emulate and that they have seen in me. And against all odds, they have achieved their heart's desires. So somewhere in the midst of everything, they were paying attention, they were listening, they were learning and manifesting. My children are all very independent. They're leaders, they're admired by their peers. And I have my 6 grandchildren and 1 great grandchild. They're as equally strong-willed and independent, and I call them my sugar babies. I take great pride in my descendants, and that's another way of saying that you are proud of yourself.
That's so true. So true. You have accomplished so much in life. What do you feel is next for you?
Well, you um, and being invited to do this, it's been such a long journey, and it took me back to the things that I started before that I had to put down on my doctoral journey. Um, my next steps are to fulfill my promise to my dad. My dad was uh, went to school in 8th grade, but he was an education father, grandfather, uncle. Every child that he met, he made them learn. He used to offer children $20 for every A that they got, and it worked. So when my dad passed away, I started a corporation in his honor, and it's Fame Futures Millennium. So the acronym FAME stands for Frank Adams Millennial Education Futures. It's a millennium corporation. So digital transformation, new technologies, data science, artificial intelligence are all areas of opportunity for new students entering the job market to embark on, especially in this pandemic. There's a lot of opportunities to learn. So online education is my area of specialization. So I want to ramp that up. Uh, my dissertation consisted of research on the number 44 White House and the Lumina Foundation goals for college completion. I'm looking forward for that to resume now that we have a new administration that is serious about education. I also was an internet news writer an avid videographer and photographer. I have a library of media and conferences and private events that I used to travel and record presentations. I was a writer for the Examiner and for AXS Entertainment. I have a lot of videos that they're dated now, so they're out there on the Time Machine, which is the Internet Archive. So I'm going to go out there and finish collecting them. And finally, I self-published a book of affirmations when my father passed away because I was so distraught. I wanted to leave and be with him, but I had to push myself up from the ground and do something to make me stand up and move forward. My book is entitled Romancing the Dawn, 365 Days of Sunshine Every Year from Now On.
I love it. Wow.
So I took it offline to do my doctorate, and I was looking up anything I could find on the internet about my book, and there are people searching for it. It's out of print; they can't get it. So I'm going to make a second edition, and publish a second edition. It's the uniqueness about this book is it actually has an affirmation for 365 days of a year. You can reuse it. And then at the bottom, it has space on each day for you to write your own goals and aspirations.
Wow, I would certainly look for that second edition. Definitely. And how has your affiliation with the Black Doctorial Network enhanced you, either personally or professionally?
I could not be more pleased to encounter the Black Doctoral Network. I was joining groups to network with other doctors, or there are a number of aspiring doctorate sites, but this encounter was a very special treasure. I consider this podcast a remarkable tool to see what other doctors are doing. And in the groups that I'm in, that's the question that I am most often finding. What are you doing with your doctorate now? Or if they haven't attained it yet, how can I get noticed? Or how can I find my what I should do once I receive my doctorate? My quick answer to that was to choose. First of all, lose the mentality that you always need to wait for someone to choose you. You can choose them, or you can choose your own direction. So I intend to encourage other Black doctors to join this community. And I also look forward to engaging more in events and activities.
Absolutely. I tell you, Dr. Adams, this has been such a delight, and truly the resilience and the determination you speak will give light to someone else. Absolutely. I want to thank you for joining us today. Please tell our viewers and our listeners where they can go to learn more about you and the work that you continue to do.
Well, presently, you can find me on LinkedIn as Francine Adams. I have websites that I am presently migrating to a new host, and I will announce them on LinkedIn. They've been up before, but I'm re-engineering them, and I will be announcing them on LinkedIn. So please look for me on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. And guys, thank you for joining us today. Please be sure to stay connected to the Black Doctorial Network and connect with us on all of our social media channels. Thank you for joining us today for the Black Doctors Talk podcast. I am Dr. Sharon H. Porter, and we hope you will join us again next time. But for now, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and tell a friend.